270 people in America have died today because they've been shot. 47 of them were teens and children. This astonishing number highlights the need for sensible and immediate gun reform. In response to one failed shoe bomb, we all take our shoes off at the airport. And yet we've had 45 mass shootings in 30 years, and we have failed to act. It is time we end the indecent murder of innocent children and citizens nationwide. So it is in the name of justice and logic that I resolve that the Second Amendment is repealed and the United States government assumes full ability to regulate guns. We see the statistics and we feel the carnage, but we must act. As my first affirmation, I submit that the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is indeed invalid, due to the fact that it is out of date and stands in the way of American justice. When the Second Amendment was adopted, the most extensive technology in arms was the musket. In the world of drones, grenades, bombs, these arms that we're protecting, the definition has changed. Constitutions have not. Yet, in the world of machine, the 9 other amendments to the Bill of Rights aren't bounded by technology, which has allowed them to be relevant in the 21st century. And yet, the Second Amendment fails in this column because it is bound by technology, and technology has changed greatly. The Bill of Rights and the Constitution has been changed multiple times. For example, the 18th Amendment was repealed to end prohibition. It is clear that the Constitution is up for reform, and we must follow the precedent of change and repeal the Second Amendment. Secondly, I confirm that an armed society is dangerous and that it allows dangerous and hazard to flourish in society. The author of Homicide and Suicide Risks Associated with Firearms in the Home, Dr. Douglas Weevil, said that an estimated 41% of gun-related homicides and 94% of gun-related suicides would not have taken place had a gun not been present in 2003. Miller, the author of Household Firearm Ownership and Suicide Rates in the United States, wrote in 2007 that states with the highest level of gun ownership have 114% higher firearm homicide rates and 60% higher suicide rates than states with the lowest gun ownership. Miller argues that more than 90% of suicide attempts by firearm are successful and only 3% by drugs or cutting are successful. This is a disturbing statistic, but as a nation we need to face the fact that logically we need to end the use of guns in our nation. As my third affirmation, I would like to tender that the government has a right and responsibility to enact gun control measures to secure a safe populace, and that gun control measures will indeed lower gun violence. According to the Center for Disease Control in 2008, statistics show that 100,000 people die every year by being shot by a gun in the United States. 20,000 of them are teens. This carnage is unimaginable. For example, we need to take the example of Canada, who has very strict gun control laws.
All right, you have 1 minute to cross-examine.
Spencer, I'm really glad you brought up the idea about the technology during the Second Amendment. Should we repeal the First Amendment? Yes or no?
No.
No. You don't think we should repeal the First Amendment?
No.
The First Amendment was also created in the 1700s, yes?
Yes. But it's not bound by technology, which means it's still applicable in the 21st century.
Excuse me, this is my cross-examination. Do you think we should repeal the Second Amendment partly because it is out of date? For example, the Founding Fathers are not looking ahead to the use of ARs and AKs, the weaponry that's available now.
It's not possible.
But they were referring to muskets.
Yes.
In your opinion, yes or no?
Yes.
So that means you are saying the Founding Fathers did not foresee radio, cinema, and television?
I'm not
and
saying.
Therefore, on that basis, in your opinion, we should repeal the First Amendment?
No.
Technology has changed drastically with the First Amendment.
No. Media is still the significance of a news source being able to communicate with the populace. That has not changed. It's not technology bound.
Time. Okay.
Good.
You have a minute to prep.
Who does?
You have a minute to prep if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm ready to go right now.
Okay. Alrighty. Okay, you have 4 minutes for your constructive.
Constitutional rights are the basis of our country and our rights that make us unique from everyone else in the world. They protect us from a tyrannical government, which was one of the direct causes of the United States Constitution. Today, the right to bear arms is under attack. It is being attacked through gun control. Thomas Jefferson stated the beauty of the Second Amendment is that it will not be needed until they try to take it. We debate the resolution. The Second Amendment should be repealed and the federal government should regulate the right to bear arms. I negate this resolution on 3 principles connected by the values of liberty and logic. My first, very simple point is that the Second Amendment is valid to this day and it should not be taken away from law-abiding citizens. It is the constitutional right of every citizen in the country. The Founding Fathers, creators of the United States Constitution, adopted in 1787, stated the Second Amendment as follows. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. As of today, Dictionary.com states the definition of infringe, as mentioned in the Second Amendment, is to breach or to violate, and gun control is doing just that. One of the biggest arguments from gun control activists, as Spencer just stated, is that the Constitution was created in the 1700s and is now outdated. Something you might hear him say is the right to bear arms is referring to muskets, not the weaponry available now. That's completely false. The Founding Fathers made the Constitution looking ahead to the future so that problems can be prevented, such as a tyrannical government. As famous philosopher George Santayana stated, those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. The Second Amendment is not the weapons it is referring to, but the idea that citizens should be well armed to prevent a tyrannical government, and that idea has not changed. The second point that should be made is arming citizens is a good thing and does more good than evil. It is a fact that armed citizens save more lives than lives lost through crimes like murder. As my opponent stated a couple days ago, he believes in gun control because it will in turn save lives. Well, that's wrong. According to a survey from the U.S. Department of Justice in 2008, roughly 5.5 million violent crimes were committed and only 436,000 of those were committed using a firearm. The same survey shows more than 990,000 crimes were stopped using a firearm. So for every one crime committed successfully with a gun, approximately 2.5 crimes are stopped or prevented successfully using a gun. Therefore, enacting tough gun control laws will only take away the guns from law-abiding citizens who use them to stop or defend themselves or others from crimes every year. While criminals do not obey laws, they will still have guns to successfully commit crimes. This is greatly seen in the city of Chicago, which has some of the strictest gun control legislation in the country, and is still one of the most dangerous cities. Dan Frumkin wrote in his article titled "Chicago Homicides Outnumber U.S. Troop Killings in Afghanistan" that you're twice as likely to be killed in Chicago than in the war in Afghanistan, yet Chicago has some of the strictest gun laws in the country. In a 1982 survey found on JustFacts.com, male felons in state prisons across the country states 34% of them have been scared off, shot at, or wounded by a firearm while attempting to commit a crime. 40% had decided not to commit a crime because they knew or believed that the victim was carrying a gun, and 69% personally knew other criminals who had been scared off, shot at, or wounded by a firearm while attempting to commit a crime. The pro-gun control side simply can't debate this issue with logic and facts, so they debate it through emotion. They say that guns were the reason kids died in the Sandy Hook school shooting, but that's not it. It's the criminal behind the gun who is responsible. The fact is, as stated earlier, that if that criminal knew there was another gun, U.S. Department of Justice says that there is a 69% chance higher he would not have committed that crime. My final argument is the federal government should have no say in regulating firearms. The foundation of the United States was formed on the principle that our government is a government of the people, for the people, and by the people, and taking away the people's right to bear arms is taking away their power and their government. Clearly, through these facts, you can see the logic and liberty behind my argument. Gun control will only negatively affect our country.
All right, you have a minute to cross-examine.
I'm really glad you brought up the Second Amendment and you read that for us all. Can you tell me what the first 4 words of the Second Amendment? Yeah.
A well-regulated militia.
Yeah, what's the definition of
Definition of a
regulated?
militia is an army composed of ordinary citizens rather than professional soldiers.
Actually, the definition of militia is a part of the organized armed forces of a country liable to only emergency. Where'd you get that source, by the way?
I got that from Dictionary.com
And
Merriam-Webster.
Merriam-Webster.
Both backing up each other.
Well, correct, because mine's from Merriam-Webster. So, may I ask, what is the definition of regulated?
I do not have regulated.
So the definition is to govern or directly control. I think that the Second Amendment pretty clearly says that we can regulate, directly control, govern, make laws about, do whatever we want to, the Second Amendment, to restrict and save lives by restricting that Second Amendment. Now, I asked you, you talked about mentally insane patients. Do you think mentally insane people are all over the world?
Sure.
Time.
No, right.
Okay, you have a minute to prep.